What's good, everybody? It's when I come back at you on another video. So in this video, I wanted to talk about success and to explain to you guys why success is all that exists, right? That failure doesn't exist. Failure isn't an actual thing, and you can never actually fail, right? What you need to understand is failure and loss. Even in failure and loss, you still gain, you still win, and it's rather normal for people in society to say that if something doesn't go their way or something doesn't go exactly how they plan or envision, they'll say that something is a quote unquote failure. Or if they take a loss, that it's a quote unquote failure, right? But it's never truly a failure. It's even in your losses, you can still gain. Even in your failures, you can still succeed because failure is not truly a thing, right? And I'm going to give you guys a simple example that I've shared here on the channel. Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, right? And people also coin him as like the inventor of like one of the pioneers of like electricity and everything, right? People have a tendency to say that he failed when making the light bulb, right? That he failed 10,000 times creating the light bulb before finally succeeding, right? He failed 10,000 times. That's what you hear all the time. People say 10,000 failures. What you need to understand is these 10,000 attempts weren't actually failures. And the reason for this is because each and every trial, each and every attempt that he gave creating the light bulb, even if it didn't work out, it provided him valuable insight and information that he was previously unaware of, right? That helped push him closer to the goal of inventing the light bulb, right? We need to understand is had he knew how to create the light bulb, he would have done it on the first try. But he didn't at the time, which is why he conducted all these experiments and all these attempts in order to figure it out, because each and every attempt he was trying something new, and each and every attempt he learned something new, which got him closer and closer to figuring out how to create the light bulb until he ultimately stumbled across the correct formula, right? Everything to then create the light bulb. And so even in those failures, right? Even in those losses, there was still something to gain, right? Most people, when they see something that doesn't go their way, they'll get mad and frustrated and say it was a failure. But what you need to understand is even in your losses, that can deliver you growth. That can still propel you forward. That can still be a learning lesson that teaches you something new that you can take with you on your next attempt or on your next journey, right? Gains and losses, or success and failure, they're two of the same, because when you succeed, when you gain, right, things are going well. Obviously, things are going in your favor. Great. When you fail and you lose, these aren't the end all be alls, right? Like you can still learn something from these situations. And oftentimes in these losses, you now have an opportunity to grow. You now have another chance to do something better, another opportunity to reinvent yourself. So it's never the end, right? And I think what makes a lot of people struggle with success and failures, wins and losses, right, is that people are so fixated in always wanting to win and trying their best to always avoid loss. Like they essentially have an internal struggle within themselves where they're trying to fight off losing, trying to avoid it at all costs. And that just creates a discord within you, right? You want to be able to accept both, right? Both gains or wins and losses, right? You want to be able to accept it all, because within either option, you still have something to gain. You still grow and you still win, right? And here's another example, right? I always, from time to time, use sports examples, right? Me personally, I have never seen an athlete who's played professional sports at the highest level, right? Say they play a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year career. I have never seen an athlete who's won the championship every single year for their 10, 15, 20-year career, right? It just hasn't happened. It's extremely unlikely. Some will say it's impossible, right? Haven't seen that happen. So we can't just label everyone a failure, right? Because seeing some of the greatest athletes of all time are some athletes that have a handful of championships and we label them as the greatest, right? In their 20-year career, they won 3, 4, 5, 6 times, right? And so people see them as the greatest. That's less than half, in some cases, probably a quarter of all the seasons they played, and yet we see them as winners, right? So, like, this is what I mean. Even in those losses, when those great athletes lost, right, and didn't win the championship for that season, they use that loss as fuel to get better because they want to be crowned champion. And if it didn't happen, right, they have the opportunity to get better and reinvent themselves and return next year, right? If we use another example I like to use, right? If you want to open up your own restaurant, because I know some people out there love to cook. I know there's a lot of foodies out there. And of course, there's a lot of restaurants that exist all over the world, right? Someone can open up a restaurant and let's just say for whatever reason, things aren't going well and the restaurant shuts down over time, right? People label it as a failure. The restaurant went bankrupt. It's gone. Someone that would label that experience as a failure, right, would be someone that after that experience happens, they just want to wipe their hands clean because they believe deep down that they're just not good enough to succeed in this industry. When someone who could have experienced that loss will say, you know what, let me think about this critically as far as why this happened, like why this business didn't succeed, and then I can also make the appropriate adjustments to get better, right? Or to try it a second time around, right? There's some business owners who can see their business going down, right? That the businesses are losing, and then they'll just label themselves as a failure and they'll just wallow in their misery. It's like when things aren't going well, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. So this is why you can never fail. Because when you're succeeding, right, things are going well, you're winning, that's cool. But even when you quote unquote fail or you experience loss, there is still opportunity to grow, right? There's still an opportunity for you to get better, to see what else you can do, to see what you can do differently. Trial and error, right? To see how much further you can take it. So this is why I've personally avoided using the term failure, because it's not a real thing. It's not, right? You may experience quote unquote loss, but that's normal because it's no different than experiencing, the entire spectrum, right? Opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Is if you've only experienced room temperature weather and you've never experienced hot or cold, how are you supposed to know what those two temperatures feel like, or what's your preference if you never experienced it, right? Same with happiness and sadness. If you've experienced happiness, that's great, but you will never fully understand true happiness if you've never even experienced to some degree sadness. Because when you experience sadness, that's when you begin moving on the opposite side of the spectrum. And that's when you realize, like, hey man, this doesn't feel the best. And so now you appreciate being happy a lot more. And it's easier for you to identify when you're happy because you know what the opposite side of the spectrum feels like. It's the same idea with gain and loss, right? Of course, ideally everyone wants to be gaining all the time, but sometimes in order for you to gain, you have to experience a loss, quote unquote loss, right? Because same with the Thomas Edison example with the light bulb. Sometimes you need to experience loss so that you can learn, you can acquire the experience and gather new evidence and learn new information that will help you towards your gain. And then when you do succeed, it's like, how do you expect to truly know, understand, and embrace success if you never experience losses, right? This is why there are some athletes, when they do finally win the championship that they felt has eluded them for so long, they begin crying because they've dedicated their whole life to the sport. They've sacrificed time away from family trips, birthdays, and even as an adult in the professional league, right? They spent so much time away from their family, traveling. Like, they sacrifice so much to the sport, to their profession, to what it is that they do. And so when they finally get to win, all the emotions are just released because they understand what they sacrificed in order to get there, right? These are the losses that, quote unquote losses, that they've went through, all the adversity, all the obstacles that allowed them to finally win. And once again, most of these athletes, if you're the star player, right, most star players don't win until they're in the league for several years because they're getting adjusted to the speed of the game. They're, for a lot of guys who get drafted when they're young, right, their bodies aren't fully developed or matured as men yet, right? So most athletes, when they're the star player, they usually win closer to their prime when they're like 27, 28, 29 years old, right? Because that's when they're at their physical peak. Is these things like that, right? So that's what it is. That's with everything in life, right? Sometimes you're going to experience loss, but the loss in it of itself is going to be a gift. And the gift is that you gain additional information and experience that will help propel you forward for success. Sometimes some of you just need to go through the motions of things in order to eventually stumble across or realize success. But some folks are afraid of getting started to begin with because they're afraid of the fear of failure, which isn't really a thing. So that prevents them from even getting started. So how do you ever expect to obtain success if you never even do anything, if you never even try, right? And those failures, those losses that people are quick to label as failures, that can provide you with the valuable insight that you need in order to actually succeed. And then when you do succeed, you will appreciate it a lot more because it took something out of you in order to get there, right? So when you think of losses, it's twofold, right? Losses or failure is one, first, a result of an error in thinking. Because why? Because we were not put on this earth to suffer. We were put on this earth to experience outrageous joy and be happy. And whenever we're feeling suffering, which is negative emotion, that is because we have incorrect thinking, right? You feel the discord within you when you think negative thoughts and you feel negative emotions, because that means that that's your true self communicating to you that this is not a right thing to think, right? That you should not be feeling this way, right? We don't ever want to feel sad, right? It's not a good feeling, so we don't ever want to feel that way. So that's your body communicating to you that, hey, something's wrong. You need to make an adjustment. So suffering is an error in thinking, because if you think incorrect thoughts, if you think about what you don't want, that's when you begin experiencing negative emotions. So that's one, it's an error in thinking. And two, the losses, once again, gives you a brand new opportunity to reinvent yourself and be better, right? If things don't go your way and are quote unquote failures, you can always look at that and say, okay, how can I get better? What adjustments can I make to get to the next level, right? That's with absolutely everything. That's with everything. So I share this video with you guys to let you know that, once again, success is all that there is, right? Of course, there's both gains and losses, but failure is never really a true thing. Like, you can never actually fail, because even in failure, it is still a gift. You can still gain experience or knowledge or information that you can learn another way of something not working. So then you can get closer to figuring out how something does in fact work. So how is it a failure or a loss if it's actually getting me closer to success, right? That's the logic there, that success is all that there is. Success is all that exists, and you can never truly fail. So hopefully this video will give you guys motivation in whatever it is that you want to go after, and whatever it is that you want to pursue. Just keep at it, because at the end of the day, as long as you keep moving forward and you keep learning and growing, it is inevitable for you to succeed. So that wraps up the video. Enjoy the video. Do leave a like and subscribe, as we are on the road to 1 million subscriber, guys. So once again, it's Joel, and I'm out. I'll see you guys for the next video.